Good evening. My name is Aisha Yaqub Mahmood, and I am the director of the Asian American Advocacy Fund. We are a social welfare organization dedicated to building a politically conscious, engaged, and progressive Asian American base in Georgia. Through a combination of policy advocacy at local, state, and federal levels, and by supporting candidates that believe in our values, we fight to create a better Georgia for us all. Thank you so much for joining us for this important conversation with our Democratic candidates for Sheriff and District Attorney in Gwinnett County. As many of you know, Gwinnett County is home to immigrants from all over the world. We are especially proud that Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and Native Hawaiians make up nearly 12% of the county's growing population. I want to take a moment to acknowledge all of our partners who have helped put this event together. Thank you to the New Georgia Project Action Fund, the Galeo Impact Fund, Georgia Equality, the Working Families Party, and Poder Latinx for being such great partners for this event and helping to put on this virtual forum. We are so excited to bring you this forum featuring our Sheriff and District Attorney candidates from Gwinnett County, but these important races are happening all over the state of Georgia. As we move into our newly rescheduled June 9th primary election, I encourage you all to spend some time researching and getting to know your local candidates for Sheriff and District Attorney. I want to acknowledge the important work of our partners at the Georgia NAACP and Informed Georgians for Justice, who are working to collect and disseminate information about Sheriff and District Attorney candidates for all 159 counties in Georgia. We will post a link in our comments for their website where you can see completed questionnaires from candidates for DeKalb County's special election for Sheriff, and they will be updating this website and adding questionnaires from all county races as we get closer to the June primaries and November election. Be sure to check out this incredible resource. Now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce you to our moderator for tonight's forum, Marissa McCall-Dodson, the Public Policy Director at the Southern Center for Human Rights. Marissa has been an incredible partner of ours and an even more thoughtful advocate for criminal justice reform. Welcome, Marissa.
Thank you, Aisha. Can you hear and see me?
I can hear you, but I can't quite see you.
Okay, so I will start and then maybe we'll figure that out in just a second.
Yeah.
So good evening. Thank you for joining us to discuss two extremely important races in Gwinnett County this year. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. We are going to be talking today about the election and the race for District Attorney in Gwinnett County and for Sheriff. I'd like to thank the candidates for participating and for helping people understand how they will lead if elected. Each of the candidates has received instructions on the format for the forum, but for members of the audience, tonight's forum will go as follows. We have divided the forum so that the first section will be dedicated to our candidates running for District Attorney, followed by the candidates running for Sheriff. Candidates will have 3 minutes for an opening statement, and then I will ask questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. The hosting organizations will be keeping time and letting candidates know when they should wrap up their remarks. Finally, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Unfortunately, we will not have time for questions from the audience, but I encourage all of our viewers on Facebook Live to ask questions of the candidates and allow them the opportunity to respond after the forum has concluded. We've asked candidates to be sure to check back through the comments for any questions from our viewers. We will now start with the District Attorney candidates, Wesley Person and Patsy Austin-Gaston. Please take up to 3 minutes to introduce yourself and your platform to tonight's virtual forum attendees. We'll start with Patsy and followed with Wesley. Patsy, are you able to unmute and join us?
Okay, can you see and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. My name is Patsy Austin-Gaston. I am running to be the next District Attorney of Gwinnett County. And this has been a wonderful campaign in that I've been on the trail. I've met many of the citizens of Gwinnett County. I've met you at churches, I've met you at forums, I've met you at barbershops, and I have reached out to get a feel of what the community is looking for. And what I get from that is that it's time for a change. The change is now. The district attorney's office has not been receptive to our community. I've spoken with mothers of children who have been incarcerated, and just the cries of the mothers for the children. One of the platforms that I have is that I will not be the type of DA that looks to incarcerate children. I will work with proactive measures to keep our children out of the criminal justice system. I also will work very diligently to keep people from getting criminal records. There are many mistakes that people can make early on in their lives, and they should not have to pay for them for the remainder of their lives. I work presently with the Gwinnett County Solicitor's Office, and we put on a restriction summit in order to help people. We are limited in that. That's why it's important that we understand that we have to elect the right people. So basically, what I'm asking for is your support, your vote. I will work to keep people out of the system, have a second chance, and also people that are coming back into our community from the criminal justice being incarcerated, that they will have an opportunity to reallocate themselves into the community in a productive way. I've been an attorney for 30 years. I graduated from Emory University School of Law, and I'm asking you to go to my website, patsy4da.com, to learn more about me, and I would love for you to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wesley?
To the organizers of this event, this is a very important time for the voters to get to know the candidates that are running for office, and I appreciate you putting forth the effort in having this. What can I say? I am a 15-year, I've been practicing law for 15 years. In that 15 years, I've been totally devoted to the area of criminal justice. I've been both a prosecutor and a defense attorney. And the reason why I'm running is because there needs to be a focus on criminal justice reform and not just on punishment. Too often we look at the amount of punishment that we can give out to a person rather than looking at justice. And justice is a different thing. The word justice means to restore, to make whole. So I want to have a criminal justice system that looks at restoring the person, not only the offender, the victim, but society, so that we can have a community that is much more just, much more beloved, and safer. I believe we can do that. I believe we can lower our incarceration rate and keep us safe. These are things that I've been thinking about my entire time as being a lawyer. I am a proud graduate of the Walter F. George School of Law, Mercer University, where they teach us how to bring our skill of lawyers to the betterment of the community. And that's what I want to do. So my website is www.sayyestowest.com. I hope you'll go and look at it and see the programs that I am advocating. And I look forward to engaging in this discussion about criminal justice reform and where I see our system going when elected as your DA. So thank you, and thank you for tuning in, and let's get started.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, both of you. So let's just launch right into it. We have been building the infrastructure of mass incarceration in this country for decades, if not centuries, and I think we can agree that the current criminal legal system is unjust. In 2016, the Brennan Center examined convictions and sentences for the nearly 1.5 million people behind bars in the country and found that almost 40% were incarcerated without a public safety reason and could have been given an alternative to incarceration, such as community service. But even if these individuals were all released, the US would still incarcerate people at a far higher rate than comparable countries. This is true in Georgia as well, with more than 45% of the people in our prisons being incarcerated for crimes that are not considered to be violent. Culture change is slow and steady work. Reversing mass incarceration requires courage and vision. What will you do to change the culture of mass incarceration that has been built in this country and in Gwinnett County? Tell us specifically what you would do in your first 6 months as district attorney and in your first year. Let's reverse it and start with Wesley and then go to Patsy.
Thank you, Marissa. Great question. One of the things I would do is to change the culture in the DA's office. Too often we think about how much time we can give a person rather than thinking about how we can rehabilitate that person. One of the things I want to do is look at our drug laws and how we are enforcing them. One of the first things I will do is move to decriminalize marijuana. I have put forth a proposal to the Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners to create a civil offense on marijuana possession of an ounce or less, to allow that person to pay a fine rather than to seek any kind of jail or prison sentence. This is a statute or something that is done in a lot of the surrounding counties in Gwinnett. Fulton County, I believe, does it. Athens, Clark, and I also believe the city of Clarkston. The other thing I would do is look at changing in terms of theft by shoplifting. That is an offense that is a felony at a very low level. I think you can be charged with theft by shoplifting for anything under $500 or more. What I would want to do is move those particular crimes to diversion, to allow those people to go through diversion rather than to go through any kind of criminal conviction. The other thing I would do, and I know we're going to talk about this, but eliminate the cash bail system for people who have non-violent property-related crimes. Go to a system that has been enacted by the Vera Institute that looks at whether that person poses a threat to the public safety, and if they don't, then they'll be let out on an OR bond.
Thank you. Patsy, do you want to respond to that?
The question first. A lot of what my opponent has indicated is what has been getting looked at overall. I think that we are poised to really dig down into reforming justice, especially here in Gwinnett County. We're one of the most diverse counties in the Southeast. We have to be sensitive to what is happening. What I would look at initially going into the district attorney's office is a conviction integrity unit. What I would do is review all of the cases that we have been dealing with in the district attorney's office. As far as marijuana is concerned, the solicitor's office has already not prosecuted those cases for possession of marijuana an ounce or under. We have already made a decision at this point not to prosecute those cases, as I'm sure everyone is aware of the hemp issue versus marijuana. There's no testing that can decipher the difference between those two parts of the cannabinoid plant. So we are not prosecuting those cases right now. The district attorney's office is looking at a different animal. When you're talking about huge, large levels of marijuana, I think the jury's still out on that. We don't have a test. There doesn't seem to be one on the horizon right now. I look at the conviction integrity unit as being a way to make sure that the right person is in jail, if anyone's in jail. If someone's innocent, they're sitting in jail. We're seeing more and more cases like that now, where people are being let out of jail due to the Innocence Projects and things like that that are going on. I think we need to be more careful on how we prosecute these cases. And I would also look at incarceration not as a way that we handle the entire load of cases, but look at whether there are some community-based resolutions to incarceration.
Thank you very much. I think in terms of, just want to ask kind of a follow-up to that in terms of mass incarceration and taking a moderator's point of privilege to address what was just discussed around marijuana and drug crimes, and thinking about even possession versus distribution and the various levels by which people are involved. But for the same reasons that advocacy groups have concerns with separating out certain types of drugs, we also have issues with certain type of conduct, that issue around nonviolent versus violent, and that distinction is problematic. I think what I want to ask you is, in terms of the criminalization of things like addiction and mental illness, and recognizing that the war on drugs is an incredible factor in what we have in terms of our mass incarceration problem. We know that it's been completely ineffective in reducing drug use or drug sales, and it has cost taxpayers trillions of dollars over the last 4 decades, money that could have been used to improve public safety, education, and health and social programs, to say nothing of the cost to families and communities, particularly people of color. Research has shown that prosecution has done nothing to stem the use of drugs or sale, any type of drug or sale. The opioid epidemic is a public health crisis that shows no signs of abating. People are dying at staggering rates, more deaths in 1 year than all American fatalities in the Vietnam War. What policy can we expect from you on the prosecution of the possession and small-scale distribution of drugs? Will you support the creation of safe injection sites to minimize the risk of death and injury associated with the opioid epidemic? Let's reverse it. So let's go with Patsy first and then Wesley.
Okay. As far as that question is concerned, I think as a society, we have to look overall at what we are doing. Basically, now that the opioid crisis is with us, there's a whole lot of leaning going toward treatment as opposed to incarceration. And I think that is happening now in most of the courts at this point, as opposed to when crack was a problem. People were just being incarcerated at that time, and that did directly impact people of color. So I think that we have to reevaluate how we deal with all of this crime. You mentioned addiction. Addiction is a big problem. And if people are addicted, they need treatment. They don't just need to be incarcerated. There are drug courts right now that exist in our county, but they are not used to the extent that they can be used. I think we also are dealing with mental issues also. And that's one of the things we have to use these accountability courts in a much better, consistent way. From what I understand, we have 11 districts right now in Gwinnett County, and they are not utilizing those accountability courts in a consistent manner. It just depends on which ADA you get and how that particular division wants to handle it. Once I am your district attorney, I will assure that all of the 11 divisions are promoting the accountability courts consistently and overall. It won't be a hit or miss. And I think that's one thing that can really help the entire situation if people can look at our legal system and say, we are all being treated in the same manner. The accountability courts need to be bigger. More people need to be going into them than just a few people. And then there's nothing basically that people, once they are
Wesley?
If it was on me. Big question, Marissa. As far as the injection sites, I favor those. I don't know if they're necessarily needed in Gwinnett County because we don't seem to have that problem with overdose and things of that nature that happen in small rural communities, especially like in Kentucky and Ohio. I know they had a huge problem with that, with people overdosing in bathrooms and places like that. As far as addiction, I think we have to not criminalize addiction. I think we need to expand the number of people that can go into accountability court. Unfortunately, right now, we have 3 accountability courts, those for veterans, those for drug users with high serious drug use and mental health. What I want to do is expand that to allow people that may not fit in those categories, but do have an addiction problem. because of some issues that they have not dealt with. We know that a lot of people are drawn to addiction because they have unresolved trauma, that they have something in their life that has caused them pain where they seek to deaden that pain with drug use. So one of the things I want to do is get people evaluated, find out what that trauma is and get them help for it so that they can break that cycle. Much like we're doing in this current situation where we're social distancing, we need to do things to be able to pull that person out so that they won't continue to go down that cycle and spread it on. We know that trauma tends to be generational because it gets passed on from parent to child. And I want to enact programs that will break that cycle so that people can get help.
Thank you both very much. 5 years ago, Gwinnett had an estimated 71,000 undocumented immigrants. Felony and misdemeanor convictions can have severe consequences on the ability of immigrants to remain here with their families. Georgia also made it illegal for undocumented immigrants to obtain a driver's license. In a state where there has been historic disinvestment in public transportation, many undocumented immigrants are arrested and then deported just for driving on a suspended license. If elected, will you commit to working with defense attorneys to pursue convictions that do not result in immigration consequences for immigrants charged with crimes? Will you commit to cooperating with efforts to challenge or vacate old convictions by immigrants seeking to avoid deportation? Start with Wesley and then go to Patsy.
The answer is yes. And I think it is really horrible that people are being deported for things like driving on a suspended license or without a license. So when elected, I will do everything I can to minimize those type of things happen. Now, for people who commit violent crimes or people who commit, drug trafficking, we got to take a different approach. We have to be able to separate those that we're mad at with those that we're afraid of. And those that we're afraid of, we're going to have to, use the full extent of the law to protect our citizens from people who would commit serious and violent felonies. But I will do everything I can to ensure that those immigrants that commit crimes like driving without a license or nonviolent crimes, and I understand the distinction that your group has with that distinction, but as a district attorney, we have to be able to make that balancing. And that's where some of the demarcation happens. But I will do everything I can to ensure that no one is being deported for driving on a suspended license or a misdemeanor type of offense. And that will be structuring sentences so that they are 11 months, 28 days or lower, so it won't trigger immigration consequences. But you also know, Marissa, that a lot of that is out of the hands of the district attorney because it's the federal government that drives that. So I hope people will pay attention at the federal level with the two presidential candidates, look at the ones that will have a common sense immigration policy that will allow people who are here working and contributing to this country to stay here. And that would, be my policy in terms of dealing with that.
Thank you. Patsy?
Yes, I just feel that as a district attorney, we have a wonderful opportunity so that the community understands that people are going to be treated fairly and they're going to be treated justly. And just like the other part I was trying to get to before I was muted is that we have to make sure that people are not feeling like they're being treated differently in our system. Gwinnett County has had a history of people coming into our county and not feeling as if they have been treated fairly. And with the sheriffs coming on later, we understand that 287G has not helped Gwinnett County. I have heard of people getting pulled over, like you indicated, not having a driver's license or running a stop sign, and families are torn apart and families are destroyed. Now, this is something that does need to be handled at the federal level where we deal with the immigration issue. But right now, as we can see with this COVID-19, we are really relying on immigrant people that come to our country for a better life, and they help us to have a richer life. And to deport people for something as simple as a driver's license is strictly unfair. It's un-American. And I think those are the things that we have to really look at and understand, that we have to do the right thing. We have to do the right thing when it comes down to dealing with people that are trying to get around in our county. And I would definitely not want that pursued. We got to get rid of 287G, and that needs to happen.
Thank you both. A COVID-19 outbreak is a huge concern in all of our local jails. On March 23rd, the first person tested positive for coronavirus in our neighboring Fulton County, Fulton County Jail, and numbers have sharply risen since. As you know, Cook County Jail in Chicago is a hotspot for COVID-19 infections, with upwards of 350 positive cases among staff and people who are incarcerated. Our community members in the Gwinnett Jail cannot adhere to CDC guidelines for social distancing and are also not allowed alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Access to soap and water is also limited for people who are incarcerated. The need to decarcerate has become even more dire during this pandemic. What do you think the role of the district attorney is during such a crisis? What specific things would you do as DA to protect those who are held in the Gwinnett County Jail who are most vulnerable to COVID-19? Let's start with Patsy and then go to Wesley.
Okay. What's happening right now in Fulton County, as of today, they have begun releasing people with just monitors on them, people that are nonviolent and don't have to sit in jail, or either people that are awaiting some trials. And I think that that's one way we can look at it. I don't think our present district attorney did anything at all when COVID-19 hit in order to start releasing people. The solicitor's office immediately started reviewing the cases and started ORing people, letting them go on their own recognizance. We've done that. And as the district attorney, I will definitely work with the jails to find out which cases that we can look at and go ahead and either deal with those cases immediately, take pleas that can be taken on them, and let people out. I think Fulton is being a good example right now today of releasing people that are not violent and that they can monitor them from home, because this is a life or death situation. It doesn't need to be that way, and we need to actually make sure that that happens.
Well, am I on? Hello?
Yes, sorry, I was trying to unmute.
Okay,
Yes, you are on.
it's not a problem. Great question again, Marissa. I think what this COVID-19 has sort of done is it's exposed a lot of inequities in our system. We see it in terms of the disproportional death of African Americans because of healthcare issues and having all of these comorbidities. And I think what we see now is the failure of our system in terms of bail. We have a lot of people that are in jail because they're poor, not because they're a threat to society, but because they can't afford the bail. And that is sad. That is tragic. And one of the things I will do when elected as district attorney is to reform our cash bail system, to go on a point system, to look at whether that person is a threat to commit new additional crimes or a threat to the community. If they're not, then to allow them out on an OR bond, to allow them to be able to be released and come in. And we have seen through the data, through a lot of other places that have enacted this, Philadelphia, New York, Fulton County to a certain extent. And we've seen that 98 to 97% of the people who have been let out on these OR bonds have showed up for court and not committed new and additional crimes. And if we had that in place, we would not have our jails filled with people who should not be there and, you know, becoming a public health threat because they're being exposed to this virus and they may be let out and then they will further expose others. So I think it's a classic example of how we have had a two-track justice system, one that favors the rich and the other that, harms the poor and vulnerable. And what I would do is institute a system that will allow those people not to be in jail in the first place while waiting a trial, and then we wouldn't have to go through these extraordinary methods.
Thank you. I just want to give a follow-up because we just didn't have the time to craft another question on bail specifically. And that is an issue that is prevalent across the country and here in Georgia as well. And I just wanted to give you, Patsy, a chance to talk about your expectations and commitment when it comes to bail reform, whether you agree with Wesley in terms of that two-track system of justice for people who can afford to purchase their freedom versus those who cannot, and what you might do differently if you were elected as district attorney. You're muted. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. The 8th Amendment of the United States Constitution talks about there being a reasonable bail. And I think the problem that we have fallen into with people that can't make bail, if they can't make it and they're sitting there and they're sitting in jail longer in some cases than they would had they went to trial and been convicted, then as a society, we have to look at that as a major problem, because we're not being in compliance with even the Constitution when we say that someone is given a bail. If they can't make a bail, then it's not a reasonable bail. And I would submit that we have a constitutional issue right now. Somebody's economic status should not criminalize them. Because, and then the other thing that we find is that people that can get out of jail, can make bail, they have a better chance of not being convicted because they're out, they're aiding their attorneys, they're doing what they have to do in order to not be convicted. And still, I think that that goes against the grain of incarcerating people. And they're sitting there and they can't make the bail, you're incarcerating them ahead of time. And that just goes against the grain of what our justice system should be about. It should be about convictions when someone's had a right to a trial, not to sit there in pre-detention awaiting your trial. And that is a definite problem that we have to deal with. As Wesley said earlier, most jurisdictions are finding if they let people go on their own recognizance, they're not seeing any difference in people returning for their trials.
Thank you. Wesley, do you want to say anything in follow-up? We're just getting ready to go to closing remarks, but if you had something, I'll give you the opportunity to talk about bail reform.
Well, I think that
30
is
seconds or so.
30 seconds, I think is a huge issue. I think it's something that illustrates the fact that we have a two-track justice system. We have one for the rich and one for the poor. And this is just one example of it. We have countless others. One of the things you talked about was treatment. Unfortunately, people who are poor can't afford treatment options. And a lot of times they're in jail because of that, where people who have the means and ability to be able to get private treatment can be able to use that to get out. One of the things I want to do as district attorney is to eliminate that and try to find programs and places where people can be housed and get the treatment that they need, so they won't be stuck in that hamster wheel. So it is a classic example of how we can change the system so that it does not favor the rich over the poor.
Thank you both. And I'm going to switch to closing remarks. I just want to challenge you all and the people who are participating to think about why we draw those lines on who we think policy reform should be made for. And if you say things like you shouldn't have cash bail for nonviolent offenses or certain types of offenses, it assumes that cash bail is actually a good indicator of someone's success pre-trial, and that if it's a more serious charge, like murder or rape or kidnapping, that if we impose financial condition there, that we are more safe. And I just want to push back on the notion that if we ever use money as the reason why someone should get out, it compromises public safety. It's not. It doesn't matter what the person is charged with in terms of how we indicate the use of cash bail. And I'll get off my soapbox. I'll just say to both of you, please, in 2 minutes or less, share any closing remarks you think will be important for the people of Gwinnett to know about your candidacy and your commitment to the office for which you are running. I want to just let people know that the Sheriff's Candidate Forum will follow this. Just want to start with Wesley and then go to Patsy, just 2 minutes or less, giving us your closing remarks, please.
Yeah, thank you, Marissa. And I accept your pushback. No way, shape, or form am I saying a delineation between nonviolent and violent. What I'm talking about is justice. And justice is a case-by-case basis. You look at all the factors and you make that determination on what is just, what is going to bring wholeness and healing to the community. And that is done on a case-by-case basis. I have spent my entire career in the pursuit of justice, for my individual clients and for society and the community at large. And that's what I want to do as DA. I don't come in with a cookie cutter approach. I don't come in saying that I'm going to treat everyone like equal, because that's not fairness. Fairness is about equality, and equality is about meeting that person where they're at. Some you may give 10, some you may give 20. It just depends on what will make that person whole. And that is the type of approach that I will bring as district attorney. Look, we have an opportunity to do something magnificent. We have an opportunity to do something groundbreaking. We can reform this criminal justice system where it looks at justice and not punishment, where it looks at the individual and not just on coming up with a knee-jerk reaction, but how can we make that person whole? One of the things I want to do is treat kids like kids. I will not, as district attorney, charge any child under the age of 17 with an adult felony. They will start in juvenile court. And if we need to move it up after assessing and looking at the situation, then we will. I have come out opposing the death penalty because I believe it is not just. I believe that the way it has been done has been unfair, and it has not done the things that advocates have said that it would. And that is a very bold position to take in the South for a district attorney candidate. But I'm taking it because I believe in justice. So I'm asking you to follow me, to go to www.sayyestowest, and please vote on June, the 7th.
Thank you. Patsy, 2 minutes or less, please.
Sure. I believe the voting date, West, was changed to June 9th at this point, but who knows what it may get changed to later. I'm just asking people to be aware and understand that this is a very important election. We have an opportunity here to elect a district attorney. A little bit more about myself. I'm a family person. I've raised 2 boys in this county. I lived in this county for 22 years, and I want to serve this county. I want to continue some of the things that I've already done in the solicitor's office of Gwinnett County. And I want to kind of state here that the justice system does need to be equal. When you have 2 people that are charged with the same crime and they have similar backgrounds, similar prior histories, then we need to be making sure that people are getting similar sentences. As a district attorney, what I want to do is consider more community-based resolutions to issues. I am definitely for reforming the justice system, and that's not anything that's going to happen overnight. That's something that we as a community have to have a stake in. When you look at Gwinnett County and you see that children basically are not prepared for kindergarten, I believe that percentage was 52%, then we're failing our children. When our children are afraid to go to school because they're afraid of school shootings, we're failing our children. As your district attorney, I will guarantee you that you can hold me accountable to the things and the changes that we need to see. Right now, we have a district attorney in office that has run unopposed for 27 years. And it's time for that to stop. And I want to ask you for your support. Go to patsy4da.com and let's speak some more about this. It's kind of hard on this format to let you know where I'm at with everything, but I look forward to speaking with the citizens of Gwinnett County.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Make sure that everyone can hear me. I'd like to thank Patsy Austin-Gaston and Wesley Person for joining us this evening and for being honest and candid about their approach to leadership in Gwinnett County as district attorney. We are going to turn now to the sheriff's portion of the forum. Again, thank you on behalf of myself, the hosts, and the virtual attendees this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.